Hello, Abnormal Investigations. This is the second upload of the day. We would appreciate a like on this video as it helps so much. And also, guys, well, you've heard me talking about the premiere. It's going to be released. If you are a Patreon member or a YouTube member, you now have a little bit of insight to what's coming as I released a video for you guys giving you some hints on what's coming, and I think you guys are really liking it because I'm getting a lot of feedback. So YouTube members and Patreon guys, that is part of your membership, that you get extra things, and I've got a lot of feedback, so you guys must have really liked that hint that I sent you. And if you want to become a Patreon member, the link is in the description of this video, and to join the YouTube membership, you just simply go to our page and then join. Alright guys, let's get into this encounter. And excuse my allergies. I have allergies so bad today I went mode. In May of 2020, the quarantine in my state was in full swing. Being a senior in college, I had to take video classes and do digital homework. The change from in-person education to remote education was so drastic, however. I had accustomed pretty well to the new atmosphere of learning and had even developed some decent independent study habits. Nonetheless, I was growling, and I was growing stir-crazy in my dorm. My friend R saved the day by telling me about a remote camping area that was about a 45-minute drive away. Fast forward a month of classes and preparations, I was loading some heavy-duty camping gear into my truck as I was expecting some treacherous terrain based off of the description my friend had given me. Having previously told my instructors of my absence weeks in advance, I had no assignments to worry over the next few couple of days. I put the folded tent in the passenger seat, checked my pockets for the keys, my wallet, and other essentials. Then, with much excitement, I closed the driver's side door and started the truck. The drive was decently calm and beautiful. The trees were very deep and gorgeous shade of green, and the sky was a nice calm blue. I was ecstatic when I drove my truck into the cracked asphalt parking lot. I had arrived early and thought I had to wait. I went to the information kiosk and asked the lady there if I could get set up. She checked my reservation and gave me the all clear. Everything was going right. It got even better when I got to the camping spot and was able to set up my tent on the first try. I found some pre-cut logs and threw them into the fire pit just to be prepared for when the night came. As I was going back to the fire pit, I set up the last of the logs. I smelled something absolutely awful. It didn't take long to find the rotten fly-covered carcasses of the dead deer. I almost gagged at the smell as I looked at the body. With my nose covered, I retreated to my truck and called the kiosk, telling them that there was a dead deer. Within a couple of minutes, the ranger came over on an ATV and hauled the carcass into the bed. He came over and told me, "I think there may be a wolf or a coyote around because the body had some pretty nasty slashes. Be careful during your stay, sir." With that command, the ranger got onto his ATV and drove away to dispose of the deer. I was a little uneasy at the thought of a predator in the forest, but wasn't too worried as coyotes and wolves usually steer clear of humans. Later I went back to the main building, showed my fishing license to the person at the desk. After verifying the license, he gave me the okay, and I went back to my truck, grabbed my lightweight canoe, grabbed my fishing rod, and I went to the nearby river to catch my dinner. My first catch was a small bass, which I threw back as it was too small. I got lucky with the second fish, which was a monster of a bass that I would likely hold me over for the next few days. The day just couldn't get any better, save for the short run and the deer carcass, but I had mostly forgotten about the occurrence already. Night came quickly as I prepared the bass and roasted it over the fire. The bass was delicious, and there was some left over. So I put it in a special bag that retained heat, and I headed to my tent to read and then to go to sleep. As I was reading, I stopped periodically to appreciate how everything was going my way. After a while, I grew tired, found a decent chapter to stop on, and got into my sleeping bag, and I was content. I awoke to the sound of the crunching sounds of a bag holding my cooked bass. Thinking it was a predator, I made some loud grunting noises to try to scare the animal away without having to confront it. After I stopped making the noises, there was no sounds outside. Not even the crickets chirped, which was odd. Then I heard a terrible scream. It was so loud and so close and so wrong it didn't sound like anything I've ever heard or heard since. It was so primal and terrifying, my fight or flight instincts kicked in at just the scream, and at the worst moment possible. And I feverishly began rummaging through my various gear to find my hunting knife, which I had used to cut the bass. After what seemed like hours of panic-filled searching, I found the knife and went outside to put the animal that made the noise out of its misery. I rapidly unzipped the flap of my tent, quickly grabbed my flashlight that was by the flap, and I stepped outside. What I saw will forever haunt me for as long as I live. Before me stood the figure of a deer eating the bass I had cooked. The deer's movements were so unnatural as it turned to face me. It began to creep toward me, crawling like a human would. But here's the really effed up part. It wasn't a damn deer. It was a freaking wolf-looking man wearing a deer skin over him. What the hell, I thought, is this thing? It had to be at least 8 foot tall. It stood up to 2 legs almost 8 foot tall. What the hell am I looking at? This thing, a werewolf, the best I could describe it, wearing a deer's pelt with a deer head over its top of its head with horns. It closed the distance, starting to run. That's when my brain finally started to work against everything that I knew, and I ran faster than I've ever had to run away from it. Using some techniques I learned in cross country that my buddies had taught me, I steadied my breathing and continued running. And what felt like forever, I realized that I still had my hunting knife. However, when I stopped to put it back in my pocket because it would do me no good against this creature, I knew then that I was so lucky to have survived whatever the hell this thing was. Wait, I thought. There's no way that thing got in front of me. How in the hell is it in front of me? And yet I saw its seemingly glowing yellow eyes peering at me from behind a large tree. I realized that I could run back to my camp, or if I had enough energy, the main building of the campgrounds. Then, with desperation that I can only describe as primal, I ran again. I think the creature realized that I was doing this because it roared in what assumed to be rage behind me as I sprinted. I could hear its footsteps as it gained on me, and I tried to run harder. I burst into the clearing where my tent was. I ran by it, attempting to make it to my main building. I reached the parking lot, and then the footsteps behind me stopped. At the area of the woods from which I came, I could see 2 yellow orbs looking at me through the thicket. Its eyes were glowing in the light. The creature didn't pass the street lights around the parking lot. I blessed the person who invented street lights before promptly vomiting into the nearby patch of grass due to overexertion. Standing in the parking lot, I was somewhat safe. It would not enter into the lights, but it would roam outside of them. As I looked up, between my heaving, there it was, still watching me. Finally, I was able to calm myself down enough to walk briskly to the main building. Upon asking what the heck was I doing in the building by the ranger there, I told him that a coyote tore into my food and then chased me to the parking lot before retreating back to my campsite to finish its meal. The ranger and I went to my campsite, and it was completely destroyed. The cooked bass was gone, my tent had been completely torn apart, and all my gear was thrown about. Yeah, the ranger said, definitely looks like a coyote did this. We promptly looked around for anything salvageable and found nothing fixable. He called another ranger to bring a trash can to throw everything away. I slept like a rock in the ranger's cabin that night, and I could not wait to head back home the next day. As I woke, I asked the ranger what he thought really had done that. And he said, I can GD guarantee you it wasn't no effing coyote. You're lucky you're alive, and you're lucky that when you ran, it wasn't hungry, or you wouldn't be here. And I looked at him and I said, what? You allow people to camp out here knowing that these creatures exist and that they're here? And he laughed. He said these creatures are everywhere. Not just in our campgrounds, but they're everywhere else too. If we didn't let people camp here or camp anywhere, then there wouldn't be any people in the wild. How do you think I get my paycheck, he said. People don't camp, I don't have a job. People don't fish, the fisheries can't sell fishing licenses. People don't hunt, well, you can't sell hunting licenses. Do you really think that they're going to do away with money to save a few lives a year? He laughed and walked out the door and said, Common sense will take you a long ways. I was pissed off at his attitude. He had no desire for human life, it seemed, as he got into his truck and he drove away. I will never return to that place and probably never camp again. That was too much for me. Thank you for sharing my story, Mike. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, but like we've said before, we know that they know they're there. And with the liability issues and the money that they stand to lose by admitting they're there, they're never going to admit that. And by him just saying the few lives that they lose a year, it's like they know that these things will only attack people with opportunity. So, what do you guys think? Let me know. Don't forget, guys, keep your head on a swivel. And until next time, don't be something's dinner. We'll see you on the next one.